All right, week 36, got a couple demos, actually some really interesting demos, so we're going to go right into it. I have two that are kind of different. Let me share my screen. I'm going to go into one of them, and let's do this. Share screen, entire screen, boom, boom, boom. See my screen okay, everybody? Yep. All right, good. All right, so this is a proof of concept for um, building out agents. And this whole thing is just, it's again, it's a proof of concept, but this will eventually parts of it will end up in our product in different ways. But I just needed a web app to play around with these concepts. And so I'm calling it AIR, AIR stands for, it's kind of goofy, Agentuity Intelligence Renderer. Anyway, the point is when you're building out agents using a coding agent, there's certain steps that you need to take, and what I've found to be really useful is a certain workflow. And so I built this thing. You can literally just roll right into like, hey, this is what I want this agent to do, and then the chatbot will go back and forth and interview you. And then what happens is it creates what I think is a best practice plan for building an agent. And so I have this research assistant one I did earlier. I'm not going to chat with it because I want to try to save some time for the end because I know Jeff's got a bunch of stuff. But what it does is you describe your intent for the agent and it spits it out. Then it generates. You don't do this. You can go back and forth and debate it, but eventually you get objectives. What are the objectives so you know what, like when you've actually accomplished what you're trying to do. Then there's specific tasks in order to complete that objective. So it generates those. Then there's specific capability you need in order to do those tasks. So like this is parse user queries, format research finding. And so then it generates the capabilities. Well, I need to be able to web search. I need to be able to query things. I need to be able to do those types of stuff. So then it builds up the capabilities list. Then it generates not the full code. That's an important little thing here because like I don't know if you've noticed this in coding agents. If you just like generate me everything, there's a lot that it gets wrong, right? Depending on which agent you use and depending on how abstract you're getting. What it does is it generates the right proper agentuity code, but with to-dos. Now, when you do this, that's those tasks and capabilities. So it kind of stubs it out and stubs out the functions with to-dos. Then after it does that, and of course you get these instructions here. What it does, of course, you can download it, drop it in your Agentuity project. I think in the future, obviously, this is going to be like built into our CLI and built into our web app that it'll just do this stuff for you. But again, POC, right? Then it generates a coding prompt, a coding agent prompt. So then you drop this in to your coding agent, and then it goes off and it finishes that Agentuity stub code here. It's kind of like, remember the 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 fill in the owl, and the joke is like the circle and the circle, and then step two, and then it's like the rest of the owl. It's like super filled in. It's this. That's literally what this is. It's like here's this. Now fill in the owl. Except we give the coding agent a few more steps based on this right here. So you can try it out. It's air.new. It's just a prototype, but the idea is this kind of thing, I think, belongs as its own Agentuity agent to help users build agents. So you can imagine this kind of thing happening in Cursor or an AMP with a skill or whatever, and we just kind of guide it along. So kind of cool there. All right, so that's the first thing. So I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to kill these agent servers because I got to show something else. And then there's a new demo. It's on our YouTube channel, and it's also in our GitHub repo. I do demo an example that is based on our streamable or durable streams. And durable streams are a really powerful new primitive we have. And I try to think through a couple of use cases on this. And one of them that I found really interesting, I'm talk about the use case before I jump into code, is you've got one stream that's going to the client, to the customer or whatever at the end. And then you have another stream where it's like an audit log. But what the nice thing about the streams is you can send that stream to the customer, but you don't necessarily have to send like the LLM model call to the customer. And that's what we're used to doing pattern-wise, is like creating a Vercel AI SDK, like generate text, right, or stream text. We're used to doing that, and then returning it. And then we have to do all these tool calls and stuff to do LLM as a judge. Well, you can actually hide that and do that behind the scenes and then stream that to our durable stream, which is pretty cool. So let me just, I'll run this in dev mode real quick. Oh, you know what? I'm in my other CLI, my old CLI. No, okay. Gotta think through this. Renamed the Agent2D CLI because of the new stuff coming out. All right, let's open up the browser here and go to dev mode. So just to show you the use case real quick. All right, so the use case is we're a shoe store called Soul Step, not to be confused with Nike. And and the use case is this is an internal chatbot agent that we built, and an employee can ask questions to the agent and can go get information, but there's certain proprietary things we don't want to disclose in anything. So if the user asks for something and the agent goes out and gets it, it'll redact certain information. So if I say draft this internal memo summarizing Q3 performance, well, guess what? Company financials is company confidential. So I click on it, it's going to run it. And we've created two streams. One is a stream that's coming back here, and then there's an audit stream, which we'll look at later in a minute. So you'll see here, it's drafting internal memo, but it's like, no, you're an employee that is not allowed to publish these things. So it starts redacting. Obviously, there's a bunch of stuff redacted here. But the point here is this is like an LLM as a judge pattern using streams, durable streams, where as things are streaming back, we're interrupting it and we're saying, no, actually 200 characters at a time. We're looking at it and redacting stuff as it's going through. So that's kind of the use case. I could jump around and show you a couple other things, but you can see the two streams here that are created. Like if I click on the stream URL here, let's open that up. You'll see there's what we saw in the dev mode. But then if I go to this stream, which is our audit log, you can see what we actually, these are the things that we redacted. So anyway, so it's a great like company confidential audit log. Like what are people doing? And we have to redact this stuff. All right, so that's kind of the use case. Let me show you, let me kill this and I'll just show you some of the code just because I think it's worthwhile talking through this. Let me just go through the agent real quick. And let me bump this up. Is that big enough, guys? Can you, is that, yeah, okay. All right, so typical Agent2D agent, got the handler at the top. We're getting the user prompt, like you just said, draft me a Q3, financial thing. So these are the new primitive is the durable streams. These are two streams. One is the main one, which will stream back to the customer. And this other one is this audit log that we kind of stuff the confidential stuff in. Then you have, I'm going to try to fly through this really quick. Then we have the typical AI SDK, versatile AI SDK stream text, right? Again, this is not being sent back because this is unsafe, right? This is the customer's asking a question. It's unsafe. We don't want to return this back. So then we get that back. I'm going to jump through this code. And then as it's coming back, we're getting this, we're stuffing a buffer of 200 characters is what I have at the top. There's a constant. And every 200 characters, we run this validate and flush. And then we do a couple things, but this is the one thing I want to talk about, this detect confidential. So again, 200 characters, we're calling this other call. And this is the agent that's like, you are a fast confidential information detector. And you can see at the top there, we have financial, product, R&D, contact strategy are our things that we care about. Now, something to notice that you can imagine every 200 characters, we're going to run a model to see if there's confidential information. That could be slow, right? If we use GPT-5, that'd be really slow. Well, come in Grok with a Q, and I'm using the OpenAI GPT OSS model. It's really fast. Comes in about 250 milliseconds. That's not bad. So you can imagine, like, if we had to use GPT-5, we wouldn't do this every 200 characters, right? We would wait a little longer. But what's cool about this is you could do things like this is happening, and then we could stop it. We could do something else. We could eject. We don't have to wait till the end of a very long research agent or whatever to then do the LLM as a judge. We could do it as it's going. So that's kind of the pattern here, if that makes sense. All right. Anyway, so we do that. I'm not going to jump through all this code, but this redact confidential basically takes the areas of the string and go, oh, this area right here, we're going to redact based on what we got. Then we write it to the audit stream, which is the stuff that we redacted, so we can look at that. And then again, this main stream is what we return to the client. So we write that with the redacted information, so it never gets back to the customer. And that's it. That's you stream it right back to the end there. So although I think maybe we don't need to get reader here anymore, do we? But anyway, that's my demo. A pretty useful pattern I found. There's a bunch of other cool stuff we can do with it, but that's it for me. All right, I believe Gabe, you were up next. Go for it, Gabe.
Yeah, thanks, Vic. I'm gonna show something, but it's already up. So what I'm gonna show here is nothing internal. It's nothing that you need to wait for. It's things that are already up. We have now an actual dashboard, because before we had a dashboard, it had some links to certain stuff on our app, but now the dashboard actually tells you information that you probably care about and you probably want to keep track of. Things like recent deployments, it's going to tell you if a deployment fails, you can click on it, it's going to show the errors, it's going to show the same info that we have on deployments. We also have a sessions recent activity thing. It shows sessions, it shows deployments as well. It shows like all your recent activity. It will show if someone specifically has done a deployment, like someone from your team, anyone that did something specific. I'm rolling an update very soon for this one, because right now you can click it and it can go to the project itself. But very soon we're gonna have also here highlighted, so we can click and it's gonna take you directly to the session itself as well. So we're gonna have that functionality, which makes it very easy, because if you're debugging stuff or if you're just running stuff in prod and you need to know if something fails, why it fails, we have everything here in one page for you. So that's it. From me, let's go to Parteek.
Yep, thank you, Gabe. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been working on adding some training materials, some tutorial content, kind of walks through our entire SDK and all of its features. So you'll see, like on the doc side, we're adding this new training section. And if we just jump into one of these modules and take a look, it'll kind of start with some industry context. A lot of these modules like kind of start you off with background knowledge about, you know, what that topic is. And then of course, we bring in like the agent 2D specific information. So it'll kind of build up your skills step by step, go through like different topics like search, filtering for memory, for example. And then a lot of these like modules with code have lab sections. So we'll kind of explain some key implementations. And then we have links to actual projects that we've built out that help you kind of apply the skills that you've seen from each training module. So you'll see we've got a bunch of different fully working projects that you can take a look at and, you know, try and build yourself, or just, you know, build on the skills that each module shows. So that's sort of the doc side of things. But as you might have seen, we have like this sandbox feature, and this is still like very much a work in progress, but we can go ahead and open that up. And you'll see we have this new window for like a training agent, right? So like being able to chat with the training agent. And it can do two different things, right? So it'll be able to walk you through all these different steps that I just showed over here, but that it can also like answer questions about Agent 2D docs in general. So we can go ahead and just like try this out, see what happens. And I'll show the code a little bit later as well. So it might take a second, but as you can see, it'll stream back some information about all the different tutorials that we have. And a really cool thing is that because this is like tied to your user ID that we grab like on the incoming request, you can keep track of like which module you're on and like which step you're on. So, you know, it knows that we're on module 4, so continue with step 2 of module 4. We can just ask it to kind of pick back up from where we left off. And we'll see it, send back some information about the next step. There you go. So it'll send back the code for the next, section of that module, whatever it was, and give some like helpful information as well. And as I mentioned, you can also ask questions in general about the docs. If you're walking through one of these tutorials and you have a question randomly about how something else works. So we can just ask, how do I do agent handoff and the JavaScript SDK? And we'll see it like go do another tool call, search the docs, and then return that information as well. So we'll give it a second. But you'll see it'll kind of stream that data back. And then one thing that we added is like, we'll actually link back to the docs themselves. So, if you want to go get that extra information, you can, follow those links and it'll send you to our API reference or our guides pages that kind of cover all that stuff. So that's kind of where things stand right now, but I'll kind of quickly walk you through the code to show you what this looks like. So the main agent that you see in this window over here, that's like our agent Pulse. So it's sort of like the orchestrator of all this, right? So as I mentioned, it can grab tutorial content. It'll use your user ID to grab, your current progress for tutorial, which step you're on. And then it'll make those tool calls as well. And one of the tool calls that we have is actually the docs Q&A agent. So, we have that prompt here, and then it'll run a different agent in this project, which is, this doc Q&A agent. And one really cool thing about how we set this up, and we just implemented this today actually, is like making the speed of this really quick. And so even though like this agent Pulse needs to orchestrate some things, either answer questions about training or, call this other agent to get documentation, we like intercept that response and we send the response of the docs agent right away. So over here is where we kind of do this. So we're obviously streaming back the data, right? But if we detect that the LLM response, that chunk, is coming from the docs agent, we'll just send that text delta, those chunks that are coming back from the LLM, we'll send that right back to the user on the front end. And so, instead of like waiting for this to go back and hit the agent Pulse, the orchestrator, and then returning a response to you on the front end, this will kind of reroute that automatically, which we found it like improves the speed from like 50 seconds to like 10 seconds. So I feel like it's kind of a cool like application of how you can make an orchestrator agent more responsive to a user or a client. So yeah, that's kind of the demo as it stands right now. A lot of cool other things that we want to do. We want to add like a sandbox where you can actually like interact with code and edit things and run it to kind of learn our system better. But that's sort of the long-term stretch goal for this project. But yeah, with that, I'll pass it over to Jeff.
It's really cool. I love the tool interception. Some really cool patterns that are emerging, that in the streams and some other things. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about a bigger topic that we've been working on for several weeks now. For all summer, we've been actually reworking our infrastructure and making it much more scalable and much more flexible, especially in different environments. So more to come on that. Alongside that, we've also been talking to a lot of users. We've been dog fooding our software ourselves for probably 7-8 months now in production. And then also working with quite a number of people that have been building agents, and both we've been tied closely to some projects where people are building agents. So we get to kind of see inside of their source code and kind of work with them a little bit closer and what kind of problems they're having and what friction they're having. And then, others a little bit arm's distance away, but we've been able to talk to a lot of users about some of the problems you're having, some of the use cases, some of the things you're trying to do. And so we've tried to take all that feedback in the last several months, and we've come up with a new project. We're calling it internally V1, probably because it will be called the V.1 release when we actually go live, since we're still technically in a 0.0 release of Agentuity in the preview period, public preview period, since we launched in June. So we're really excited about this new change. I'm going to go over, it's the first kind of public peak preview of this. I'm going to go through a little bit of it today. I'm hoping to make this repo live over the next few weeks and start letting you get your hands on it in the new environment. But this has been the culmination of a ton of feedback and a bunch of, honestly, architectural design decisions and big changes that we're going to make based on a lot of this feedback, and kind of understanding where we want to go as a product and kind of where you want to see us go to help you build agents. So with that, let me start with showing you a few things. This is going to probably be a little bit of a radical departure if you've been using Agentuity for a while, but we're pretty excited about the feedback that we have gotten from all of you. So I'm going to first start with, there is a new mono repo. It's not public quite yet. It will be public, like I said, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. There's just some internal changes that we need to make with our cloud infrastructure to be able to make it public. But there will be a new mono repo. We're also going to change some of the naming and terminology. One of the problems with right now the Agentuity SDK, it's both an SDK, but it's not really an SDK because you can't really use it outside of our runtime, which has caused a lot of friction. Because typically when you think of an SDK, you think I can take that SDK. If it's a JavaScript SDK, I can take that SDK and I can drop it into a Node app, or I can drop it into other apps, and it should work. And it doesn't quite work that way. So we're kind of changing some of the terminology. You can sort of see we have a new mono repo. This is the new mono repo setup that will be fully open source. We've broken them into different packages to make it more clear what the intention is. So we now have a very clear, the CLI, which we're rewriting using all this new framework, core, which is sort of a core set of capabilities across all of our runtimes, or all of our SDKs, I should say, all of the code. We have a new React package. This is one of the things, I'll show a little bit of this, but this is one of the feedbacks we've gotten is people want more full stack capabilities from us. They don't think about agents necessarily and always in isolation. They think about their agents in context of a larger application and how that kind of interacts with. So we're sort of thinking and trying to produce some capabilities around that. We're going to rename what was traditionally called runtime or SDK into runtime, because that's kind of ultimately what it is. It's the runtime. It's how we run and execute your agent code. And then there's a server, which will be the kind of what we would traditionally call a server-side SDK. So you'll have kind of a set of client SDKs. Right now, we only have React. Expect other client-side technologies as well. And then we have a server backend, which means you can run the new SDK in any environment, including none of ours. So if you wanted to, do a bunch of stuff around KV or Object Store in your own Node environment, you can use the server SDK, all of the code, and just use that. The runtime will use those same, of course, SDKs for itself. So let me start with maybe a quick demo, because the structure is radically different. A lot of the familiarity hopefully will be similar, but like the structure is a little different. So this is the new CLI. It's going to, again, build off a lot of the learnings we've had from the previous version of the CLI, and a lot of the kind of like small things that we've really wanted to improve. You run it just like normal. You wouldn't run it via this command line. It's just because I'm in development mode. I'm running it from my source code repo. You'd normally run it with Agentuity command. So I'm going to run this. Let me just run this via. I'm going to give it a directory, and then I'm in the mono repo. So I've got a bunch of test projects in my mono repo. So let me start with apps testing, and then I've got an app that's already authenticated that I can run. And of course, I need to give it a command. So let me get a dev command. I'm just going to start it up. So a little bit slightly different experience. But we don't have yet the full remote dev mode integrated yet. That hopefully will come next week. But so that's not showing up yet. That will be coming. So you know the remote tunnel that you get, the public URL, which is really nice for development. Everything else looks pretty similar. Hopefully, we do have this new ability to do a .h or not dot, but press the H key. I can clear the console. I can, restart the server automatically. Of course, it does do hot reloads for you, so you don't have to necessarily restart it. When you make changes, it'll hot reload on the fly for you. But if you wanted to manually restart, you could. I can see my agents, and I can now see my routes, and I'll explain some of that because we've made some pretty big architectural changes with how we now separate routes and agents. But you can sort of get that detail now. And let me just shut it down just to kind of give you. So that's kind of a little bit of a new experience. What's also nice is I'm going to log out. So let me just log out real quick. You can now also run in logged out mode. So I'm just going to continue without login, and it'll start right up and everything works fine as is. We are working through some unauthenticated capabilities. So hopefully will come out before public release. So you can run some of the things that you would normally have had to log in or sign up for your account. We'll make that really easy for you. You can even see right here, user provided API key. So it automatically detected that instead of using the AI gateway, because I'm not logged in, it fell back and found my OpenAI key as an example. So let me stop that. That's kind of there's a whole new experience around creating an app, running it, etc. Let me switch over to some of the code and show you some of the code. So let me first start with the app layout. I'm going to go to this testing package. So we've got some different types of harnesses. So this is the new layout. Looks like a normal project, Bun project in this case. I've got now an app TS. This app TS, this is only some of this, this is just for my test app. This wouldn't normally be in the template. This is just because as part of the test setup, we're validating that we actually have set some things as part of this test harness. But you have this new create app, which allows you to create an app. What's nice about this new create app, it actually is just a HANA. We're using HANA underneath the covers as part of our framework. So it'll just be, you can actually just even get the HANA app right here. And if you wanted to go add middleware immediately, you could just start adding middleware right here, which has been a big thing that people wanted. They wanted more control over the low level routing and kind of the binding between the routes to the agents and less magic that we were doing before. So you can do that kind of stuff. Let me remove that for a second. In this case, I'm not adding anything, so I can just use the defaults. We're getting rid of the YAML complexity, and we have now just a really super simple JSON file that has some basic information about your org, and you'll be able to set some really basic information about your resources and things like that there. We're moving away from having to set transports and all that stuff up remotely. I'll show you that here in a second, but it's all going to be configuration driven. So instead of having a separate CLI or web app that you have to do set certain things up, 100% of it is code driven now, configuration and code driven, which has a lot of nice properties. For example, if I deploy a different deployment and I change some things, all that stays with that deployment. So if you want to run a preview release or want to roll back to an older deployment, you don't have to worry about, I got to go reset something up or roll back some settings. Everything sort of stays with that deployment as you'd expect it would. Now we have a new folder structure. So in source, we have 3 directories now, kind of top level. They're all optional. Agents probably would be something we would expect you to always have, but certainly that's optional as well. We have a new APIs folder and a web folder, which I'll come back to. So let me start with the agent folder. I've got a bunch of different demos here that I've been using for testing. I'm going to start with the most simple one. So you have this agent simple. This is my simple agent. You can name it whatever you want. The folder is helpful in the route. So we do use convention-based routing. So I'll show you that here. So we'll start with the route first. So one of the big feedbacks we've gotten from quite a lot of people has been separating the agent from how we communicate with the agent, and if it even needs to be communicated with directly. As an example, a lot of agents don't necessarily need to have, let's say, an API or a webhook interface. Maybe you do an agent to agent, like in Parteek's case, for example. You might have a bunch of sub agents, and they don't ever need to have any access. They don't ever need to have an API key or anything like that. But you want other agents to be able to communicate with them. So, and then in other cases, you do want to have, let's say, an agent with a public API or even a private API. But I might need to add my own authentication. Maybe I want to use Clerk or WorkOS or something like that, and I want to only make sure that that agent can be accessed from my secure environment with my own JWT tokens based on some client information, or maybe I have some backend thing that I want to do to validate that. So we now give you complete control over that. We made it really super easy for you to do that. But if you want to bind an agent to a transport, you can you explicitly do that now. We've made that really easy. So we have a create router helper here. You can see that from the runtime. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. The router, at the end of the day, is just a HANO. It's just an extended HANO reference, a HANO route. So you can sort of see all the things you expect you should be able to do. I can get, set, post, or get, post, put, delete, etc. I can add middleware. Like in this case, I'm using the validator. I'm using the Zod validator middleware to validate my schema against my agent schema, as an example. So there's different things I can do here from a route construction standpoint, and then the route can then do whatever it needs to do, and then we've cleanly separated the route or the API from the agent. So now the agents are much more well-defined and much more composable. It means that they're also easier to kind of like compose them together, share them, make them easier to communicate, and there's a much clearer line of responsibility. There's more of a single responsibility for what the agent does and what the route does and how you then compose them together. So that's been a big amount of feedback that we've gotten. So we now have this agents or this agent. We have a number of methods or properties that get decorated against the context that give you convenience, and everything is 100% type safe. That's another thing that I've gotten a lot of feedback on, and we've kind of run into that a lot ourselves. Is like, as we evolve types or as we change things, sometimes as those drift, it becomes really difficult when the editor or the linter or the TypeScript type checker doesn't catch those things, right? You only catch them later. And so we want to sort of leverage all the benefits of the rich ecosystem that we have around this. So you can sort of see here, I've got my simple agent. All of my agents are available. And I'll jump into the agents here in a minute, and they're fully typed. In this case, I just run my agent. So I might want to do some pre-validation. I might want to take some data coming in and massage it or validate it or change it or do some lookup before I send that data to an agent. Now, I could just send the data directly to the agent. That's fine, as long as it meets the schema of the agent. But that's up to you. So we're kind of like, again, we're kind of cleanly separating what the agent gets and how it gets it and what it returns from the transport or the APIs, et cetera. In this case, obviously, is a really simple example. So let me jump into the agent itself. So we now have a separate agent file. We have this create agent, which is just, again, very similar, but simplified to what we had before, the agent handler. One of the things that everyone's been asking for is schema validation. Now, schemas are optional because sometimes agents don't even have, they don't have a schema, or they don't even have data. Maybe they output data, but they don't take any data in, et cetera. So the schema itself is optional. You don't have to provide it. You can see there. You can also provide, input and output. You can provide one or both or none. So in this case, this is my input schema, and this is my output schema. So I'm taking, now I happen to be using Zod. The other really cool thing we've done is we're not making a dependency on Zod. We're using the standard schema spec, which means you can use, there's like 30 different validation libraries under the schema validation spec. So any spec or any type library or schema library that implements that spec, which almost all of them do now, you can use. So we're using Zod because we're all comfortable, and we use Zod in a bunch of other areas, but you might want to use ArcType, for example, or one of the other schema libraries. That's totally fine. We take those schemas as well. So in this case, I'm basically saying the input that the agent is going to expect is a name and an age, and then it's going to output a string. So obviously a trivial example. It's not actually doing a true agent. This is our test case harness. So what you'll see is you have this agent context, very similar to what we had before, but a lot smaller and a lot more powerful. So you have your KV and your object store and your agents and all that against your context, but you don't have to worry about requests, response, and all that anymore. In this case, you already know I can just destructure this because I know what the schema is. It's only going to invoke if it matches the validation. In this case, you can see my handler here. I'm taking in a name and an age, and I'm just going to return it because I said it was a string. If I try to return an object, here, you could imagine what will happen here is it's going to not validate, right? And you'll get really nice type hinting and things like that. So you got kind of really nice safety, et cetera. Let me undo that. So that's the agent. I'll go through a couple more examples here, but that's the agent. So what's also nice is because handoffs become a lot easier in this world, because before you had to kind of like, look up the agent and hand it off by ID or by name. And there was a little bit of like, it wasn't type safe necessarily. You didn't know what the agent was doing. If you deleted the agent, rename the agent, create a new agent, there was a lot of kind of problems with that. You didn't have a lot of safety around that. So now you can just see I'm calling agent simple in this agent folder, or the simple folder rather, but I can call any agent. I mean, any agent that I have access to, I could just say agent dot and then immediately get a list of all my agents that I have. And then of course I can get full type safety based on that. And I can do that inside the agent as well. So I can do it in the agent, I can do it outside the agent, et cetera. So you got a really nice set of composable values. As well as here, you can see I ran it, I awaited it because it was async and I got some text back. I can do whatever kind of handling I want. Maybe I want to do some post-processing. Maybe I want to set some header, HTTP headers or a token or a cookie. Maybe, whatever I want to do, kind of, again, cleanly separate those two. Let me just show you like an example of KV. There's a little bit more. Again, this is my test case because I've built a test harness to test a bunch of these capabilities out. So you can sort of see here I have a Zod schema. This is going through and testing a bunch of KV. This is an agent that's testing a bunch of KV stuff, KV operations. But you can sort of see KV looks exactly how it looked before. And then the route here, again, example, I'm just binding my route to my agent. So that's kind of how you do agents. We have a new definition. This isn't fully implemented, but I'll show you the POC here. This isn't fully working yet, so that's why you see in the ini here. But on the email, so for email, SMS, cron, things like that, things that before you had to go to the dashboard and you had to set them up and configure them, and then if you wanted to import another agent and it needed an email, you had to set all that up. There was a lot of friction around that. And like I said, if you deployed a new deployment or you had to roll back a deployment, you didn't have the right configuration because the configuration was independent of the deployment and the project, the source code. It created all kinds of weird problems, right? So we're now sort of tying those together very tightly. So the sort of deployment code, infrastructure code, is now tied into the project. So I'm using a trivial example here, but you'll be able to do route.email, and that will, when you then deploy that, that will automatically create the email infrastructure behind the scenes, create the bindings, automatically do the routing to your agent, et cetera. This any will go away here, and you'll get a nice typed, we haven't done this part yet, but you'll get a nice typed email shape object that will all have already been parsed for you with helper methods for replying and things like that, kind of like you have today, but a lot better experience. Just to show you a cron example, before, again, you had to go to the dashboard, set up a cron, all that. You could just create a cron route, and then you give it a cron schedule as an example. And then we'll just call this handler back whenever the cron triggers. So you don't have to worry about setting up the cron and invoking it and do all of that. We'll handle all that for you. You just write your handler and then run your cron whenever you want, or do whatever you want to do for your cron. Let me do a couple more examples and then I'll kind of move on. So let's do something like a little more fun, like a stream. So this is a readable stream. Now, obviously, we'll have you can also return one of our one of our durable streams, but this is just a trivial stream just to show you an example of that. In this case, I annotated the schema to say it's a stream. So what that'll do is it'll automatically, what's cool about that is if I annotate it as a stream, then it'll automatically properly type that it expects a readable stream of the schema type that you gave it, which is really cool. So I can emit tokens that are fully type checked, which is really nice. And in this case, I'm just returning a stream, or this could also be a durable stream because it implements the readable stream interface. And then you can sort of see over here, we've got a convenience method that we've annotated on top of Hano. Again, we've made some additional augmentations to make it easier for you. You don't have to use these, but they make it really easy. So in this case, I can just return a readable stream, and we'll do all the streaming underneath the covers in Hano. I don't have to write all that streaming logic to stream it back, as an example. Let me do a couple other things that we can't do today in the current SDK, like WebSockets. We don't really have an easy ability to do WebSockets, but we've made that just trivial in the new world. So you can just create a router WebSocket, and then we pass you back a WebSocket interface. That's just the normal WebSocket here. As you can see, a WebSocket connection, and then you can have lifecycle methods. So this is a really cool one. So this one, the front end can send, or wherever the server or the front end can send a WebSocket message to your agent, keep a live connection. The agent can do whatever it wants to do and send data back from that WebSocket. So, and then even like another one is like SSE, which are really popular as well. So let's say I wanted to, in this case, I've got an SSE connected server-side events. Every second I want to push some data back. So you can sort of see here, every second I've got an interval running every second. Then I'm just going to basically run my agent, and now I'm just going to write that data back to the client as an SSE, as a server-side event. So again, something that we really couldn't easily do today, but you can now do very easily right out of the box. So that's kind of the new layout. Let me show you a couple other things real quick on the front end, or sorry, on the back end. We also have these APIs and web folder. So for the APIs, they work exactly the same. They're just APIs, they're just normal routes. So we just made that really easy. You can sort of see here, it's just a route. So it's just kind of convenience. You can of course put your APIs over in the agent if you want, but we just kind of made it a clean separation because maybe you will have a bunch of APIs that have nothing to do with agents, and you want to put them there. So we just made that really easy. We also have support for web now. That, again, this is probably one of the most requested features that we probably had, is like, I want to build a front end around my agent, or I'm building a full stack app integrated with my agents. I don't want to have to go to a separate thing or have a separate repo or have a separate thing and try to figure out how to do all this integration. Again, totally optional. We're going to make it really easy if you're running a Vercel app or some other type of app to have a first-class integration into our capabilities as well, and make that all full stack development. But in this case, we're also bringing full stack development here. So in this case, I've just got a normal React app here. And you can sort of see I've got my normal React app here, my test app. And then we have, this also shows off some of our new front end React library capabilities. So again, this is my test app. So we have a few different front end capabilities that we're working on. Again, it's totally optional, but you can drop these in. You can also drop these in outside of Agentuity, and it'll communicate with your Agentuity agent. So let's say you've got a Next.js app or a Remix app, and you're deploying that to Vercel or somewhere else, but you then want to have your Agentuity agent, and you want to have that be seamlessly integrated. So these hooks are going to do all that for you. And what they'll do is they'll give you full type safety with your front end apps. You can see right here, just use WebSocket as an example. I can just use WebSocket. I can give it, it's all type safety all the way back to your route. So, and it's your agent. So in this case, it's only going to let you do, which agents you have in your project, et cetera. So in this case, you can sort of see that WebSocket route I created on the other side now has the ability to create the client version of that, and we'll do everything for you automatically. Same with the SSE. You can also do this use agent hook. Again, we're still evolving this this library as we're starting to use it in the new code, but you can just do a use agent, give it one of my agents, and we'll automatically give you a run endpoint from the client. So even if you're, obviously your agent run on the server, we just made all that really easy for you. So in this case, you can see right here, I've got a reactive agent result, and I've got a run command, and it's fully type safe back to like what we saw on the other one. So if I tried to put something in there, it's It's going to be fully type safe all the way to the client as well, which is really, really powerful. Everybody's been asking for this. So, so I can just run that agent, get back the data. It's all transparent. How it kind of communicates to our network and all that's all built into the SDK. So make it really easy. We'll have a number of these sort of front end components to make it really easy. You know, whether you're running inside of an existing app with our framework and runtime, or whether you're running outside of that, we're going to make that really easy from an integration standpoint. So that's pretty much it for like the first sneak peek. Did I miss anything, guys? Rick, Parteek, Gabe, Will, etc. Anything I missed that maybe we wanted to show off?
I don't think so. I mean, that's a pretty good overview for now. A lot more coming too.
A lot more coming.
Good. Yeah, it's amazing.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody. We'd love to get your feedback. Obviously, if you're excited about this and really like this new direction and want to talk to us, reach out on Discord or email us or something like that. We're happy to jump on with you and give you a closer look at some of this stuff. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. See you. Bye.